So, just to kind of outline what my research goals are for my senior project, just to clarify, this is work for my Division 3 project, which at Hampshire is just kind of a year-long research project that you do in lieu of taking classes, essentially. So I've been working on this since September. And so beginning with my hypothesis, I hypothesize that there is some form of relationship between farmer perceptions and experiences and established expectations for climate change impacts on farms. And I'll get more into what that means in a little bit. And through this hypothesis, kind of explore farmer perception of climate-driven impacts really in-depth and really personally through a small amount of in-person interviews. And through these interviews, discover some biophysical issues that farmers are facing, if any, and some adaptive strategies to combat these issues on their farms. And through gathering all this information, explore this relationship. So my research is taking place in the Pioneer Valley. And actually someone from this morning's session also did her master's research in the Pioneer Valley. So the Pioneer Valley is in western Massachusetts. It encompasses 3 counties of Franklin, Hampton, and Hampshire counties. Hampshire County is where my school, Hampshire, is. And there are over 2,000 farms. The average size is 67 acres, so all relatively small scale, a lot of like family-owned and operated farms. And there are a whole slew of types of farms, a lot of high-value fruit and vegetable farming, some dairy, a lot of livestock, a lot of haying, and veggie farmers, yeah. Okay, so I kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but my methods for my research began with a literature review. And through this literature review, I was able to establish certain expectations for climate change impacts in agriculture. And actually, a lot of people earlier talked about this exact topic. So maybe to refresh your memories, some examples would be more frequent extreme weather events. So that could include droughts, floods, ice storms, really heavy rainfall. That could also include warmer winters. Another change is less days with snow on the ground, which has been really having a big impact on agriculture in the Pioneer Valley. Soil erosion, changes in phenology, pest and weed pressure, etc. So I continued my research through doing in-person interviews. I so far have interviewed 8 people through 7 interviews. One of them was with a couple that owned a farm together. So my goals for these interviews were to learn basically what sorts of issues have these farmers been facing, to what do they attribute these issues? Is it related to weather? Is it related to regulations? Is it related to climate change? Is it related to something completely external? And also, are they concerned about these changes into the future? And if they are, or if they have faced certain issues, what kinds of adaptations have they implemented? Or maybe what kind of adaptations do they want to implement? Are they thinking about? Have they heard about? Are they learning about? So from the literature review and these expectations, I generated a keyword list of about 35 keywords. Just words that came up a lot in the research. And from that, I conducted a word count. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just went through all the interviews, counted how many times each keyword was mentioned, just to give myself kind of an idea of what concepts we discussed, what concepts were mentioned by the farmers themselves. And then I assigned different correlations to each instance of a keyword. So a positive correlation would mean that this context that surrounded a specific keyword was positively correlated to what these established expectations are. So for example, if someone said the keyword drought, the context would be that they were concerned about drought. They were facing more droughts. They were taking measures to combat droughts. They were taking measures to prepare themselves for droughts in the future. So that would be a positive correlation. A negative correlation would be they've never experienced any changes in droughts. They don't think that there's more droughts. They don't think that there's any kind of pattern. They're not taking measures to prepare because they don't have concern for droughts into the future. And it's just a negative correlation to what the literature is saying. It's not right or wrong. Mixed, an example would just be, responding to a question with a lot of uncertainty, doubt, they just don't know. So it's a mixed correlation. And not applicable just means the context isn't related to the theme at all. And then lastly, I conducted some in vivo coding, which literally just means going in, pulling quotes, and using them as examples of maybe some challenges, some adaptations in my final paper. So some preliminary results, really big graph, but on the y-axis are all of the keywords that I used. This is all of the keywords that I included in the list that I was looking for throughout all of the interviews. And they are ordered from most positively correlated to least. And on the x-axis is the percentage of all occurrences of every keyword throughout the interviews that are either positively, negatively, mixed, or not applicably correlated. And as you can see, there is a very positively correlated trend throughout all of the interviews. There are only 2 keywords that are less than 50% positively correlated. So, and just to kind of reiterate, the pie chart on the left, I have plotted the average correlation percentages of all of the keywords throughout the interviews. And as you can see, there is a 75% positive correlation between farmer sentiment and these established expectations. So there's a very positive relationship there. And these top 10 most mentioned keywords, it's just kind of to demonstrate what topics were mentioned the most throughout these interviews. And the most mentioned word was actually grow, or some iteration of grow, growing, growth, grew, grown. But it's a very majority not applicable. But the most positively correlated and one of the top 10 most mentioned keywords was warm. So that kind of demonstrates that people are talking about changes in temperature. People are expressing concern about warming. People are taking adaptive measures to combat this warming that they are concerned about and have been experiencing. So these are just some examples of quotes from some of the interviews, just to kind of demonstrate specific challenges and changes that people on farms mentioned to me when we were talking. Just 3 examples, there are a ton more. But the first example is a change in the first frost date in fall. One person mentioned to me that when him and his wife moved to the Pioneer Valley in 1994, they had never ever experienced a frost date past the 25th of September, ever. But that has recently changed. The second is the extreme weather and unpredictability of weather. So this person mentioned that predictability is very low. Variability is super high, especially in the winter. Winter could be, you could get slammed with snow, and then you could see huge fluctuations in temperature, and all the snow could melt. It's just extremely variable. And the last example is of soil erosion. So with the days of snow cover becoming less and less, you see a lot more soil erosion because of wind and rain. And that was a really big concern for this person in particular. So some adaptations that people mentioned within the realm of those challenges, first being actually taking advantage of a longer growing season. This person mentioned that he was starting a spring CSA, which I had never heard of before. And that's like a really beneficial and really proactive and productive adaptation to something that some people might see as negative, and it might be negative. But he found that this was his way to react to a warming winter and a warming spring, was to be proactive and use this to benefit his own farm. The second example was actually taking measures to prepare for extreme weather. That includes investing in new infrastructure, investing in field houses to protect growing crops from extreme weather and extreme climate. And the last, within the realm of soil erosion, is practicing cover cropping, reducing tillage or practicing no-till, and then really focusing on enhancing soil quality, kind of as a buffer to soil erosion and also as a way to mitigate and capture carbon. And that was really, really important to this one person. So essentially, this whole project is still in progress, but right now what my overall impressions from what I've gathered is that there is a positive relationship between farmer sentiment, farmer experience, farmer perception of what is happening in real time and in real life to what research is also projecting, which I think is a great thing. And really what I want to do next is to kind of explore the nuances of this positive relationship. Why is this happening? Is it because research is taking farmer perspective and farmer experience and including that into actual research that they conduct? I'm not sure if that is the answer. Is there no answer? I just kind of want to explore why this positive relationship does exist and to even possibly close the gap even more, which is to say to include farmers in agricultural research and to improve upon the dissemination of research. So how do we get farmers more involved in published research? How do we make it more accessible to people? How do we give it to them in a way that they can actually use and it doesn't just sit around in a journal for your peers to read? So in that vein, the final part of my project, which is kind of my own form of dissemination of this research, is to create a booklet of sorts that I will publish online. It'll kind of be a summary of the issues I've researched, what people are facing, and also a list of really practical kind of how-to guide for adaptive solutions. And that's it. Thank you.
Time